Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome you to the Way New Way. And we're calling it the Way New Way today because dairy can be messy. So the new way takes everything we thought we knew and weighs it again. And the Way New Way takes everything that everybody thought everybody knew and gets into the muckiness. It's not quite like yogurt, but you got to have courage to balance your way. I'm here with Bruce, and we may have other folks dropping in from time to time. Bruce, how was your weekend?
It was reasonably good. I went on Sunday to a pub here locally for the first time. First time I've been in a pub in over 2 months. I've been staying away from the pubs, but a friend of mine hosts uh, a group of local musicians, and they play Irish music for about 3 hours in on Sunday evenings at this pub. It's a lot of fun. You get little girls doing Irish dancing, and people are imbibing, but there's no craziness going on. There's no arguments. There's no there's it's good conversation. And I met a couple of interesting people. One young man or younger man um, who grew up in Ireland in County Cork. And my Irish family is from County Cork, from Kinsale, which is a different part of Cork that he was from. But he was drinking Guinness, and I was drinking Smithwick's, which is a wonderful Irish ale. And we just sat there at the bar, and listened to the music and chatted, and it was very pleasant.
Can you actually hear a chat over the music at a bar?
Well, you can in this particular instance because this group of individuals that are playing, it's all acoustic instruments, and they are not uh, amplified at all. It's live music, live acoustic music, and there's no amplifiers. So yes, you could probably sit on top of the table that they're sitting around, and you could still have a conversation with somebody. You wouldn't want to try that, but yes, you can. You can, talk and be heard and hear, you know, who you are talking with. And I don't know. I like acoustic music, and I like unamplified acoustic music for that reason, because it doesn't get so damn loud, and you don't have people shrieking as a consequence, or whistling. I hate that. That's why I don't go to concerts, and rarely have ever gone to concerts, because you always get the whistlers. When somebody whistles in my ear, it just goes right through me, and I'm gonna turn around and punch the guy right out. That's how I feel about the whistlers. It's just too loud. My hearing's really good. It's a little too good at times, I think. And but anyway, I think I've answered your question.
Yeah, I've been watching YouTube lately of groups doing acoustic presentations of 60s, 70s, and 80s rock
Yeah.
and young people now around 20. And it's
Mhm.
interesting to hear the same thing that you've heard before a couple times in a new form.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to bring on Gavin. Gavin, this is Bruce. Bruce, this is Gavin. How's your
Hello.
weekend, Gavin?
It's good. It's good. How are y'all?
We are okay.
Mhm.
We have been sort of talking. I've been introducing Bruce to the concept of Chizzy. And so we're having a conversation about the potential of collective human superintelligence. I've been watching the episodes of The Start is Near, and I'm through the first 6 episodes cataloging what people have been saying in the formation of the collective human superintelligence. And I don't know. There's some things about that that are funny. I'm not sure that the people are on the same page, but the people who are there on screen certainly think everybody's going to be on the same page really quickly. So I get a good laugh out of it.
And I'll just chime in very briefly and say that, as far as I'm concerned, collective superintelligence is an oxymoron.
Well, I'm curious if you.
Oxymoron.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'd like to hear more about what makes you think that.
I'm not sure I heard you correctly. Say that again.
Oh, I'd like to hear more about your thought process behind that.
Well, I think, I think superhuman intelligence is an oxymoron. I mean, that is, I think that's self-explanatory.
Mm-hmm.
Without, waxing poetic about it. I mean, humans do have a certain amount of intelligence. There's no question about that. But I wish we used it better. I wish we used it a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like there's something to do with the self-recognition process, the cycle of being metacognitive. So to reach like super intelligence, you have to turn it inward. And so when I hear you say, wish we used it better, instead of applying it to stuff out there, I'm thinking more about applying it in here.
Well, and I agree with that 100%. I mean, I think that the the Buddhists, for instance, who the monks, the people who meditate a lot,
Mm-hmm.
they're not out here where we are right now. They do go within, and that is the answer.
Mm.
That is the answer. That's how we're going to solve a lot of the problems, if we ever do solve the problems that we have here, politically, socially, environmentally. But we got a long road to hoe. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm finding that as I listen to the group and see where people are coming from, my knowledge base is different from the knowledge base assumed by some of the other participants. And it's still a big collection of people feeling each other out. I think that from the first 6 episodes of The Start Is Near, they formed a core of maybe 8 people that, well, you were part of it, Gavin. The 8 people who came to the first 6 episodes all consistently were there 5 or 6 of the episodes. So people like Mike and Victor have a presence within the group that the main group fits together and everybody knows their roles. I think once I get into episode 7 and 8, I'm going to start seeing more new people come into the group, because half the people that were already in the group when I came in at episode 10 aren't there yet. And for some reason, I thought there was more going on, especially from what Jamin said early on with his number counting. And so I find it very interesting that it's a group that the group theory that I'm working on, which is taking chemistry and trying to apply it to sociology, is actually relevant at this stage of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you talked with Mark about trying to use that for the meetings that he's hosting?
I have been to one of Mark's meetings and I've talked to Mark twice, but not one on one in depth. And I'm not sure that I'm not sure I agree with where Mark is coming from his base set, but I don't want to interfere with his process of iteration by changing something major that he's got worked through until I talk to him. And he's kind of scattered to talk to. I want to talk to him one on one because I think people get different impressions of what he's saying depending on who he's talking to. And in the collective room, well, I haven't reviewed the chat that I was in with him in the collective, but I I get the impression that dividing time evenly amongst all the participants is less fair than a number of other ways we could come up with things because it's just a first order approximation and we're going to need a lot more orders of depth to work through some of these problems.
Yeah, he has Pareto categories. So these are categories of influence, things like physical beauty, intelligence, sex privilege, social privilege. There's 6 in total. So as the model gets more comprehensive, people can handle, the base is just strictly time. And then once people kind of master that domain, then they can move into that Pareto category because it's much more triggering, so to speak, to try and enact those categories.
Yeah, I would get more from attending more of Mark's meetings and seeing more. The first time I met him was when Victor and I bounced into one of his meetings that was underway, and he didn't want to really engage because he was running the meeting. And I understand that completely. And I can't point out things on the fly if I can't engage.
Yeah.
It's a problem I see in a lot of sciences is that it's a balance between when to engage and when not to engage, because when you engage with other people and get new ideas, you sort of put a different spin on what you're doing. And if you're trying to come up with some original thought, you don't want those different spins influencing the original thought. So, a lot of times for me, I'd rather get through my whole way of thinking and then introduce it to people than get help while I'm thinking along, run into a logic point that causes me to have to go back to a previous logic point that I had gotten wrong, correct things, and the whole process doesn't work for innovation to get it perfectly right the first time. It's just get it out the first time and then use iterative process to hone in on what's correct. But you can't get it correct if you start off flawed.
Okay. Well, he hosts 2 meetings a day, 6 a.m., 6 p.m. PST, and he asks at the end of every meeting, what can we do to improve this? And then we iterate on it every single meeting. So I don't know if that qualifies for what you were talking about.
Where does he have his meetings?
Google Meetup. He sends out a link there, between 15 to 5 minutes before every meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I have used a lot of different mediums to talk in the last couple months, and I really don't like using X or Google.
Okay.
They're both programs that I just don't want to put any time into. And in fact, I'm probably going to put less time into the Chizzy time is what is it? The time is near. Anyway, my head's all confused now. But anyway, I'm going to go into the background of that group because I want to do measurements and look at the group theory and not really look at the content.
Well, that's something that we're doing within the ELMs as well, is we have people working in the back channels in certain groups, dissecting the meeting's actual proceedings.
Yeah, I think it would be good for me to get together with Mark separately without a group meeting being dissected, and you're welcome to join us to just flesh out the whole thing in once without what I watched seemed to really punish people who got on a roll. As soon as somebody would get on a roll in Mark's room, they'd run out of time, and there'd be, I'll give them 30 seconds. I'll give them 45 seconds. And by the time all the time was accumulated for the person to continue to going, they picked up in a different place and had lost the thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, conversation between people is part of understanding group theory. And the more I watch different conversations, the more I broaden what I would think is normal. And the more I see how me personally does not have I don't really do it right. I don't have the social graces of having proper conversations with people as a give and take. I slip into patterns of, hey, I know something, verbal diarrhea comes out. And it doesn't necessarily reflect well on the person who spews forth. And to me, I want to get the whole topic talked about before somebody takes the feather and turns the topic, and my hand's raised and 5 people down the road somebody calls on me and my point isn't germane to what's being talked about anymore, and it was 15 minutes ago that it would have been relevant. Mm-hmm. So depending on the level of the conversation, which is something I need to talk to Mark about because I haven't gotten his system as to how he rates conversations and pulls the information from it. Mark is a gentleman who is trying to work out the mechanisms of multi-person conversation in the frame of these types of talks. And we're talking about a group that second order has more than 5 people, and there's a functional purpose to the group as opposed to just getting to meet each other and hash out a lot of individual differences. I noticed Nathaniel in the audience has asked who is being talked about, and I don't even know Mark's last name, but it's
Mark McCormick.
Okay. And
New World Spirit.
Okay. And a lot of what's going on, I think, is going to multiple people will come up with similar ideas and approach them differently to get things working. And everybody's got to be right in their own mind or it won't work for them. So in being critical of process, it's important that there's alternate processes being developed so that later on they can be compared to each other to find out which is best. So a lot of times the groundwork in any science is getting to know your variables and not really worrying about the results until you have a handle on what each variable is going to do with your process. And the process is too new, has too many people, too many variables right now. But it's funny because there's two ones in the Fibonacci curve, and one is the individual, the other is the entire group. But the entire group size of one is a variable because the group can be 3 of us, it could be the entire population of the world, or something in between.
I think it's important for people to realize that they can be wrong. They can be wrong. And that there are other individuals who have more knowledge about whatever subject that may be that they're not quite right about. But there's an enormous segment of the population right now that think their opinion is all that matters and everybody else is really wrong. And so it's really created a class of bigots, extreme bigots, because they pass judgment on everybody who doesn't think the way they do about politics, science, medicine, everything. And people don't have conversations anymore. We're not discussing things. Everybody's staring at their cell phone.
Well, we are discussing things. That's what we're doing now, is having the conversation.
And that's why I like to be here, Lenny, and I contribute as I can, because this is an unusual process, and it doesn't happen that often in meat space, so to speak. I mean, I did say I was at a pub on Sunday and I had a really nice conversation with a young man from County Cork in Ireland. But you don't get into conversations very often with people, and they get real sensitive, if you aren't agreeing with what they think and say. And so conversations are, as a consequence, very limited often.
Yeah.
And I think people need to discuss issues more. They need to debate politely more. They need to have conversations with one another, even if you're conversing with someone who doesn't think the way that you do. It's important. It's important.
I mean, this is the basis of the Hegelian dialectic. So the whole idea is to take two opposing sides and go through the process of sublation, is what it's called in the dialectic, where you merge the two and you find a synthesis between the two of them. And so that's the foundation of all of the work that we're doing in the ELMs.
Now, one of the things that I still have troubles with are using the large language models to develop the AI to be of assistance. In certain areas, I see where it would be immensely helpful. In other areas, I find myself frustrated by not being able to follow the information presented as logical. And I think that the program that I've seen on the AI is such that people can get the AI to respond to them by training it in a way that they're comfortable with the response. But I haven't seen two differently programmed AIs trying to resolve any issues. And I don't even know if that would be possible. I have seen statistics now that say that where the normal growth curve of things is to become exponential and go out, that Chat GPT these days is losing people who are just turning it off and not using it any longer. And that's outside of the model that they had expected, to the point where there's actually a decrease in number of people using it than there were 3 months ago. And go ahead, Galen.
That has to do with other models popping up like Llama and Gemini. Gemini just came out. I mean, and it's fantastic. It would be reasonable that people are diversifying their LLM experience.
That could be very much so, because the first group out has such an advantage in the marketplace that they have the entire market until the next one comes out and do it. But tell us about the different LLM models and what the essential difference between them is, and maybe the similarities too, because I'd love to have an AI that can tell me the timestamp of when you said XYZ somewhere in here, but that's not what I see it doing. And I got even less satisfied after a 2-hour conversation with Victor on how to work with it than I was when I went into the conversation. Victor's awesome. He knows a lot about things, but it didn't transfer to me what he was saying in a way that I could actually make it work for what I wanted to do. And that's okay. It can't do everything at this point.
Well, that would be the basis of what I would have to say. It's just not there yet. There's an adoption curve process, basically, where you have, like an individual person like Victor would fine-tune a model and create all this intricate pipeline stuff so that it's doing exactly what you're describing. It can take time-stamped things, transcribe all conversations, log it into some kind of repository. Okay, that's all like not part of just a large language model's like capacity at this point. That's bells and whistles. But as the models become more and more robust, for you to ask it to do something like that could be reasonable within the next 2 years, is my guess.
Okay, because that's only part of the collection of the metadata. But the metadata is very influential on the data. And I know from being a chemist and doing stuff in the laboratory that you have to repeat a process through many trials to get it to work the way you expect to before you can even start the measurements on the system that you're actually building. And it's real important to know how to tune the equipment and how to prepare the sample and a whole bunch of things that have absolutely nothing to do with finding the actual structure within the crystal of the chemical that you've invented that you want to demonstrate is real.
Yeah.
But that's a microcosm of a macrocosm of how research gets done. And 90% of research gets done the same way time after time because you want it to be reproducible. And so you measure the things that you can control and you get it to where your system is reproducible. And then you start repeating the experiment and seeing that you get what you're expecting. But a lot of times people get the same result the second time and the third time and think they're always going to get the same result. And life's a yin and a yang, and for every one result, there's always another result, and we say one's better, one's worse. But then at the individual basis, you can get all sorts of things happening from people who don't even really get the protocol, but have an idea, just do it, and it works. And then people will say, well, that was impossible. You couldn't have done that. And they couldn't have done it if they didn't believe in what they were doing and not have the knowledge that told them it wouldn't work. And so I think that we're seated with knowledge that isn't true to make sure a lot of things don't work because they, and I have no idea who I mean when I say they, the powers that used to be, maybe, but somebody got involved with the system early on, changed a few things, and it's not workable. If we can't question the knowledge base and find out some things are generally basically wrong in the way we're thinking, we're not going to get through this current set of problems very effectively because we've got some real screwed up embedded logic that comes out now manifested maybe 60, 70, 80 years down the road from when they implemented it that wasn't expected and just is not sustainable, I'll say. But look what the medical profession did in the last 4 years with viruses. And the one thing I can tell you now is that as a scientist, I no longer believe that viruses exist in the form that they explain to us because the whole thing doesn't make any sense. And so I quit thinking about it because I'm not going to take anything experimental without knowing what it is, and they can't explain to me anything that really answers my questions.
One of the things that's really fundamentally wrong about that whole phenomenon is that there is no such thing as a vaccine for a virus. No such thing. Because viruses mutate so quickly that you cannot create some sort of a chemical vaccine that's going to, you know, solve any kind of a problem that's caused by a vaccine. It's just fake medicine, and the whole thing was a fraud. The whole thing was a psyop. And look at the millions of people that have died as a consequence because of that fucking vaccine. Millions of people have died from the vaccine, not from COVID. And if you look at the numbers, there's no more flu. There's no more flu anymore. The flu's gone, right? It's all COVID. It's all COVID. And that's total bullshit. Everybody that got COVID got the flu. And they're convinced that they got COVID. And they have these test kits and it says, oh, I'm testing positive for COVID. But Lenny, as you and I have both observed, I could give my cup of coffee a COVID test and it'll come back positive. My coffee will be positive for COVID. That's how crazy the whole thing really was and really is. And it's ongoing. It's ongoing. I have a close friend in a nursing home right now, and I just got an email from the nursing home that said, well, we have, another outbreak of COVID and blah, 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 and you can't educate these people. They don't want to be educated. They're convinced. The media has brainwashed them, and people are running around absolutely terrified of something that really doesn't exist. But they'll let them stick a needle in their arm, won't they? A lot of people will. Enough about that subject, from me anyway. Thank you very much for listening.
I find that I have added herbal tea to my beverage list and that seems to help. But I've had one good flu in the past 2 years, that knocked me down, and I didn't take a COVID test, so it couldn't be COVID.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm doing okay.
I haven't had the flu in like 8 years. So I mean, I could walk into the. First of all, I stay out of hospitals. I haven't had a doctor in 30 years. I don't I don't want doctors. They're just drug dealers now. But I could walk into that nursing home without a mask and be perfectly safe. The people that should be wearing a mask are the people that are really sick, that are coughing, that could be expressing droplets that are contaminated. I think we lost your friend.
For the moment, that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody can't be on screen in their seat through all time.
I'm going to get another beverage myself. I'll only be gone for about 4 seconds.
Okay. No, the idea of the general conversations of Chizzy, when you have conversations between less than 5 people, it's a feeling out of the other people to get to know who's there, and not it's going to take a while for people to get comfortable with people again, because we've been made to believe that other people are the problem, whereas I believe we're all the same person in some sense, and that we're just showing different aspects of the same things. But humanity has become totally schizophrenic.
Well, to some degree, you're right. I wouldn't say totally schizophrenic, but there's certainly an element of schizophrenia in humanity now, and that was well expressed with that whole COVID thing. You know, the whole pandemic. I call it a pandemic. Well expressed. I don't know. I mean, people get really polarized by things like that. And today, we're polarized by quite a number of issues that don't allow us to really communicate with one another anymore. Not effectively, anyway. Because people will reject your opinion out of hand if you don't agree with what they think.
I don't believe that at all.
Roger that. Right. Politics is totally polarized people now. Democrats and Republicans used to be able to talk together. We used to drink together.
Oh, they still do after the sessions. It's all just for the screen.
Yeah, all just for the screen, I guess. Yeah. Well, today's Super Tuesday, right?
What's that mean?
What's that?
What's that mean?
Is
it like superhuman intelligence?
Today.
Oh, they're voting.
Yeah, they're voting today. Super Tuesday.
Did they kick Trump off the ballot yet?
No, actually, the Supreme Court just ruled that Trump is not. They're not allowed to kick him off the ballot. Apparently, they may be allowed to assassinate the man, but they are not allowed to kick him off the ballot.
Oh, okay.
I fear for his life and RFK Jr.'s life for that very reason, because the deep state has so much power in this nation, and they don't want either one of those individuals. Look who they're running. I mean, Biden is brain dead, for Christ's sakes. He's brain dead. And he's running for president again? This is a man who's supposed to be a representative for our country and a diplomat and a statesman? I don't
See,
think so.
we don't really want to pay any attention to that because it's
Yeah, I know
insane.
we're live, and sorry,
It
I'm
would only
sorry.
bring insanity here into our nice little place
Right.
where we are virtually not alone because we can talk to each other.
Hmm. Yeah, forgive me for waxing political for a moment there. Um, yeah, I could wax further, but I won't. I could wax further.
Now, one of the things that would help immensely is if there was a process to actually be able to bring up a question and get a real answer based on common knowledge. But I no longer believe that knowledge is common. And I wonder how many different ways they teach people in schools things so that they fomented a lot of the arguments by teaching people off different basis sets. So now we don't have a fundamental basis that we can all agree on to jump off from. And that'll lead to some problems.
Well, of course, and what you really are referring to is the fact that there's different databases, and if you prescribe to one database, and I prescribe to another database, and Gavin prescribes to a third database, we're going to come up with three different results in you know on a number of different issues.
You
So,
know, sorry, go ahead,
no,
Bruce.
no, I'm yielding to you.
What we're doing in the ELMs with Mark is addressing just about everything that we're talking about here. So I know it looks kind of disoriented and goofy in your experience, Doc, but underlying that is 7,000 hours of research from Hegel and a shit ton of thinking and philosophy. And so the essence of it is that there is a universal logic. So this whole we're thinking from three different domains is not what we're saying, that there is a unified way of experiencing the world that is absolutely true, independent of whatever fucking story you're telling yourself.
Right, independent of personal opinions.
Sure, yeah, perspective or something like that. Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
So, I
Well, I think the truth is inviolate.
What's
The
that?
truth is inviolate. The truth is the truth. And people will make up all kinds of things that they will claim are true. But there's only one real truth. And yielding to that truth, the real truth, and nothing but the truth, to quote an old proverb, is really, it's important that we are able to recognize exactly what you're talking about. That there is a universal truth that countermands everything that we might otherwise. So I'm excited to learn more about what you're doing there. That sounds really very cool. If that's where you're headed, that's that's a really good logical way to proceed.
There's relative truth and absolute truth. Yes, thank you, Bruce, and I'm with you, and I'll send you links, if you'd like. There's relative and absolute truth. Absolute says that it's self-sovereign. It constitutes itself. Things like Ouroboros, kind of the paradoxical nature of something. It like the hand drawing the hand, Escher Bach sort of stuff, right? Relative, I am holding a teacup. That's relatively true because it has a relationality to it.
But it doesn't necessarily have tea in it.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
You can drink, single malt scotch out of a teacup.
Sure. Why not?
Exactly. Yeah.
It seems to me that the quantity measurements are pretty much stable, that people can count and measure how much of something they have. The quality measurements, on the other hand, vary greatly between individuals. And some people can expect a higher quality of things, whereas others just are happy to have things and the quality will be filled in later. As I do metrics to find measurements of value, I run into the problem of different people having different values, but not being able to express what those values are to the person they're talking with to make it so that there's a value comparison. And so, as George Harrison once sang, it's all up to what you value.
Value is also relative.
Oh, there's no question about that. Value is very relative.
Yeah. Well, so I posted this 3-minute clip. This is how I contextualize relative versus absolute.
Okay. I'll take a look at it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I sent you that meme, by the way, Lenny. You may have gotten it already.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, if Gavin, you would let Mark know that he's welcome to invite me also to a one of his sessions. That
Sure.
I'd be happy to pop in if it worked out on that day. I know that Wednesdays are not good at that time, but just about any other day, there's a very good chance that I could make it at 6 Pacific.
Cool. 7 days a week, so let's go.
Which would be 9 Eastern, Bruce.
Right.
Or you could do the morning time, 9 a.m.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm awake at 9 a.m., whereas at 9 p.m., I'm sometimes not awake.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. I go to bed early, I mean,
these meetings are also a process meeting so that you're never in with the same people and you're never going to be talking about the same topics necessarily.
We're introducing a new framework right now. So we have I just hooked Mark up with a lady who has a framework called TCI, and I'm forgetting what the acronym stands for, but it's basically a 240 question survey. And then she has got a model for mapping out how people relate to each other, essentially. And I took it, and she suggested certain people. That's how I met Victor, for example.
Okay.
And it's true. Like, she was like, you should get along with this person. And I met with them. I'm like, I'll be damned. I really do get along with that person. That's nuts.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So the idea is now to take that and have that feed. There's a symbiosis. Basically, there's the applied space of the ELM, and then that draws back into people like refining the question and survey, and like refining how we would place people into that model, and then that model suggests the kind of people to draw back in and have a group experience again, and feeds back into the model again. So there's this feedback loop process.
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's really, really important that sort of work get done, because otherwise you get to groups where people get tripping over each other, and we need to be able to hear individuals out, to hear what they say, and get questions answered by people who have a good handle on what the situation is. Right now, I can't ask questions to most people. I don't get answers that address the question. I get reaction.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to pick on people. I just really want to know the basis set that they're operating from. And I know my basis set is different from most people because I use chemistry as a basis to look at everything. And chemistry is a very detailed, specific subject that is so narrow in its scope that you can use chemistry and apply it to other things, but it's rare that you get other things that apply to chemistry.
Well, and you could really be absolute with chemistry. That's, essentially what you're referring to, because it's so narrow in scope. I mean, there's only so much that you can. Well, I think I just said enough. We live in a really reactionary society, a really reactionary culture, and that's part of the issue that affects us all and makes conversation and real communication much more difficult now than it used to be, because people don't accept other people's opinions. Whereas once upon a time, you could sit down with somebody who had a vastly different opinion than you, and you could have a rational discussion, and you could remain friends if you weren't friends in the beginning. Whereas now things have gotten so reactionary and so polarized that people are no longer communicating effectively anymore unless you get with a group of individuals who think just like you do. So, Gavin, your premise about absolute truth is, I mean, that's refreshing to hear, that you are part of a group that is engaging in a search for absolute truth as opposed to relative truth, because I think relative truth is well, I don't want to be confrontational, right? But relative truth is relative to certain things, right?
Yeah, it serves a function.
Acceptable. That's an acceptable response. Okay, and I agree with you. It serves a function, but it's it's different than absolute truth. That's why I said the truth is inviolate. We can't change the truth. We can spout all kinds of stuff. We can completely confuse the general population. We can propagandize people and brainwash the shit out of them, but we don't change the absolute truth.
Doesn't appear so. Bruce, are you familiar with spiral dynamics?
I might be, but that I'll say no. How's that?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I'll give a quick rundown. Lenny or Doc, are you familiar with it?
Not really. I'll let you give a rundown.
Okay. So there's three originators: Don Beck, Claire Graves, and Christopher Cohen. And they spent somewhere around 20 years doing research to, reify this model. So it's these stages of development on cultural scales. As society moves to different stages of development, it articulates the characteristics that it has, and it tends to move from tribal or collective to individual, to collective to individual. And this oscillation between it's essentially like kind of hero's journey. You're born into your culture, you go out and you forge your path, and you bring back home. You come back home. You make yourself independent, come back home and bring that newfound wisdom through that process back to your collective, right? And so currently it seems abundantly clear to me, and there's a lot of people who agree about this, that we're transitioning from stage orange to stage green, because that's primarily it here in America, United States of America. That's where most people reside. Orange is like hyper capitalist, grind culture. Go out and like grind your, like, make $1 million, dude. Become like, get that sweet car, right? And now this is transitioning into stage green, which is hippie kind of thing. You're looking at uh, climate change activism. Activism is a huge word. Burning Man would be a huge one, a great example of it, where money is becoming less of a, fetish, and where's more and more emphasis put on relationality to one another. And so when we're talking about this bifurcation of like, why does it feel like there's no communication possible here? Like, we're just at an impasse in communication. I see it as that we're in a transitionary period where the majority is moving from one stage into a next stage of development.
As an old hippie who has been to Burning Man,
Yeah.
I I totally agree with what you're saying, and I think that it's really, it's cool that that emotional and spiritual content is still alive in this culture.
Yeah.
It's really important because we had something really important going on back then. It wasn't just free love. I mean, I'm still a bit of a hippie. Okay, there I am. I'm still a bit of a hippie. I decided at one point to just say I'm just gonna let my hair grow until it all falls out.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I still, with my condolences to the Mad Dr. Time, I'm just lucky that I still have my hair. I have more hair than my son. More hair than my 40-year-old son, which I think is, it's just, it's a matter of genetics, and it's a matter of lifestyle. It's a number of things that all work collectively together to create the whole that I am, whatever that is, And but I think it's what you just said. I think it really feeds me in a fundamental way, because I think it's important for the hippie culture and the people that went. I don't even advocate going to Burning Man anymore. I went to Burning Man years ago when it was still pretty cool. Whereas now they charge for parking and they charge for everything, and it's all about money now. It's all about money. But when I went to Burning Man, it was art. It was about art, and it was about communication, and it was just really, really cool, really cool. And I'm so grateful that I only went once. But I'm really grateful that I went. And of course, now I'm way the hell out on the East Coast because I came home to see my mom, and I'm still here. Burning Man was really fundamentally, it had an elemental consciousness to it, and so did being a hippie. I mean, it wasn't all about smoking dope. I mean, there was a really cool culture that went along with being a hippie.
Yeah.
I don't even smoke dope anymore. I can't. My lungs are congested because I smoked dope for 55 years, and I can't even smoke anymore. I still get really high and I love it, but then the next morning I'm hungover, and so I had to quit. I wish I didn't have to quit because I still love to smoke dope, and I know that Lenny still smokes periodically, and it's actually unusual for us to have uh, a what is this called, streamyard session without you taking a toke or two on your pipe, Lenny.
Yeah, about every 20 minutes is the normal rate of smoking.
But I haven't seen you. I haven't seen you take a hit today. And normally you will take several hits during a StreamYard session.
Yeah, it's not that it's not here. I got lit up before the session and just have been more into the conversation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and as you know, sometimes you have gotten me. I'll get, you know, I'll do a hit because I see you do a hit, and I'm in the circle, and it's so hard to get out of the circle. It's really hard to quit. Really hard to quit.
Lizzie says she's been on a natural high since she was born.
I totally relate to that, Lizzie.
Yeah.
That's very cool, and that's where we should all be. We should all be a natural high. I'm high all the time now, probably because I have so much THC in my body now, in my cells that I mean, I don't even need to smoke it anymore. I'm walking around. I'm high all the time.
Fully crystallized.
Well, and I did a lot of tripping, and I used to grow psilocybin mushrooms. I did a lot of mushroom trips.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
How many grams have you ever done in one trip?
What do you mean grams?
In psilocybin, how many grams of mushrooms have you done?
Oh, I never measured it, but I had access to essentially unlimited amounts of psilocybin because I was growing the mycelium.
Yeah.
So I could take as much as I wanted.
I'm just curious. I was just curious. I haven't talked to anyone who's ever done over 5 grams, so I was curious to talk to somebody who's done that.
Well, the thing I love about psilocybin is that it's so organic. It's so different than an acid trip, for instance.
Yeah.
It's so fundamentally and chemically different than an acid trip. And I did a lot of acid trips too, but because I am a real hippie. I was a hippie in the '60s, and that's a long time ago. And I'm still here, still vibrantly healthy. I think I'm healthier than most people 20, 30 years younger than I am, principally because I eat mostly organic, and it makes a huge difference. And I haven't had psilocybin, and it's been a while since I've had psilocybin. It's been a while since I've done acid too, probably about 2 years. I asked people when the last time they did acid. And the last time I did acid, a friend of mine had given me a couple of hits of window pane. No, blotter. From Nashville. And I brought it home, and I had 2 hits, and I gave a hit to my son and a hit to me, and we had this incredible bonding experience. We got really, really high on acid together. It was a beautiful trip. I've never had a bad trip. Some people have bad trips. I've never had a bad trip, but I owe that to my constitution and my state of mind. I don't know how else to explain it. I think the people who have bad trips are, yeah.
Got some shadow.
Trips are troubled. They're troubled emotionally, and the acid brings out the uncertainty and the trouble and the emotional difficulties that they're going through. And, I'm just lucky. Well, I work at it. I work at it. This has been a really interesting conversation. Thank you. It's nice to meet you, Gavin. Nice to meet you, bro. You know, I
Thanks.
mean, I know that Lenny's going to cut it off soon because we're over an hour now, and
Yep, Lenny does like to keep the conversations in the hour range because he feels that most people aren't going to sit for 2 hours to listen to the full conversation. Although most of the conversations I've had that go 2 hours, I'm so engaged in that I couldn't leave the conversation in the middle. But let's say thank you to the audience, and we'll be back again with more of the Way New Way at some point. And for those of you who are wondering, the Way New Way takes everything we knew and weighs it again, but dairy can be messy. So the whole process is going to be one of those of iterations of conversations, and we look forward to talking to you again. Take care and be well.
thanks, Lenny. Thank you, Gavin.